Well, it's a bright and beautiful day, and it's so good to have you join us. Start your day with us on the show this morning. It's Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, reaching you live from Star Times Channel 190 on the DTT platform. You can check out all our social media handles to follow the conversation. Also, check us out on YouTube, where you can follow the conversation live, and you can also catch up with all the missed episodes of your favorite programs. My name is Emmanuel Ojadigele. I'm your host, as usual. Welcome to the show, and we hope that you have springs in your steps and that things are going all right for you.
Thanks for joining us this morning on the Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. I'm Temitope Ajijala. Good morning.
Such a beautiful morning to just take your time and enjoy April. April is gradually coming to an end, just 10 days before the end of the month.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that a lot of persons are looking forward to next month. The inauguration of many persons will be taking place across the country, president-elect, governors, and some other positions. And then for the houses of assembly, or some houses of assembly, National Assembly, until June before their inauguration. That will be very interesting to watch and very interesting to see. In the meantime, cases are in court. Everyone is trying to reclaim or defend their mandates, and it's up to the judiciary to do a very good job, a very thorough job, to ensure that the law is properly interpreted, and there is no wrong precedent set for future cases. Well, let's start the show for you this morning. We have the papers ready. When we'll come back from this break, we'll bring them to you and help you see what's on the faces of the national dailies.
There it is.
All right, welcome back to the show. It's still Morning Spring. Let's start with the papers for you now. We'll begin with the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper is where we make birth, and we'll start with the banner headline that says, Insecurity, local rice price jumps by 200%. Local rice price jumps by 200%. Rice price soars from 173 naira per kg to 521 naira per kg under Buhari, despite government intervention, NBS report. Rice farmers, producers, experts blame rising inflation, insecurity, others for rice woes. Now, what's striking for me is the fact that this was supposed to be our alternative to the rice problem, the food problem. But even our locally sourced rice, our locally made rice, is really soaring high from 173 to 521. It's like it's been rightly put, a 200% increase.
Yes.
You know, people can't afford foreign rice. They also cannot afford local rice. We'll soon get to a point where some things will become luxury, even for the common man. And we're getting there. We're getting there, sadly. Kerosene, for instance, you used to buy kerosene when there was people didn't use gas that much. But now you have to buy kerosene at an exorbitant price. People, even charcoal, the whole
was almost
yes. I mean, firewood now is also cost everything is just bought. This is very worrisome because the cause of this increase now is insecurity. It means that if people were allowed to go to their farms without being killed by marauding terrorists and bandits, and if the media stopped reporting it as clashes rather than what they really are, purely attacks, unprovoked attacks in most cases, maybe the government will be made to see reason to act.
Well, there was a time when our parents told us stories of rice being a luxury. As a matter of fact, they said they only ate rice at Christmas. And that's even some households, not all households. And now we can see that that story was actually true. It's not a lie, because we're fast approaching that period again. Yes, many people cannot afford to eat rice in their households anymore, and not even some of the very popular foods, or foods that we're familiar with. And people are having it so bad, and our local rice has been having issues of not being properly, processed. You get stones in them, sand, and then even at that, it's still very expensive. And it means that farmers are having, lots of issues from planting to production, and now the food is very expensive. Rice is very expensive now, and even the imported rice, like we call it, is expensive as well. And I don't know what the common man has, as some sort of dividend of democracy, or dividend of having a good governance. I really don't know. If rice has jumped by 200%, it's really worrisome.
But as we say in Nigeria, may God help us. May help us. But below that is a very disturbing story. Lagos mob burns BRT buses. Driver dies in crash. There was an accident in Lagos yesterday that claimed, I think, 1 or 2 lives. But the mob was angry and then burnt down the bus. Again, jungle justice, mob action comes to play here.
Yes.
And I strongly believe that we cannot continue like this. This is one government property destroyed. It would take millions of naira to replace it. Taxpayers' money that could have been, pumped elsewhere, getting used to replace that bus. No matter who was at fault in that traffic incident, the burning the bus was not.
It wasn't.
The way to go.
It wasn't. But I would love to also point our attention to the government's, the government's side to this particular thing still happening, the mob actions. You see, when we have a preceding event that was not or isn't, being well attended to, or we have the judiciary that is not spontaneous enough, we may be getting things like this. I don't know where, that the last BRT case, the train crash to, I don't know where that case stands now. But when people see that the government is not, acting as fast as they should, then it's possible that we get mob actions. I'm not excusing that fact. I'm just saying that as much as people need to know, what they should do, the government should also do their own part. When everyone is playing their roles, things will go smoothly. And it doesn't mean that a wrong can right, can put things right, but we all need to play. Yes, they don't make it right. And we all need to play our roles and play them fast. We shouldn't be lax in our roles at all. It's very, very important.
Very important. On pages 2 and 30, El-Rufai raises the alarm over insecurity ahead of May 29. El-Rufai raises the alarm over insecurity. So much has been said about that, but the defense architecture, security architecture, and its leadership have assured us of adequate security, and we're waiting to see how they will go about that.
Yes, and with this time around, we hope that it's not all words, but it's all words and actions to back them up.
We hope so. Okay, so let's move on. Another red story there, another red story. Ogun father chains starves 2 children to death. Ogun father chains starves 2 children to death. Again, man's inhumanity to man, but in this case,
plain colors.
Father's inhumanity to children.
The last one we heard was a woman who sold her child, and now we're having a father chaining. I mean, when you say children are starving, because here it doesn't necessarily mean that he couldn't feed them. It meant he starved them. He starved them to death. But the first thing to talk about, being very wicked, is the chaining of children. Children are not animals. They're not goats or chickens or rams or whatever. They're children, people with life, just like you, people with rights, just like you. And you chained them and starved them to death. I don't see any way out for him. I believe that they should well, I'm sure he must have been arrested right now, that he should be prosecuted. An adequate, punishment should be given to him that measures up to this kind of act.
Well, let's continue with the papers. For use of standard materials, quacks caused Banana Island building collapse. Well, it was visible to everybody.
Yes.
In fact, if you didn't need to be a building expert to know that that kind of structure, a 7-story building, can only collapse in that manner if it weren't properly on two grounds. There was an earthquake, fine, and substandard materials. It's just
quacks.
common sense of quacks. It's just common sense that needs to be followed.
Yeah.
That's the report. We hope that the right persons are prosecuted,
Yes.
and that it serves as a deterrent
Yes.
to other people. Page 29, Buhari returns, avoids Sudan airspace. Very wise move there, because bullets flying up and down, missiles flying up and down
it's a very
Sudan at the
wise
moment.
move
You're on the Sudan
But
case.
yes, but then I would love that the president takes the words of the NANS president to heart. That's National Association of Nigerian Students in Europe. They should take his words to heart. Japan is, trying to, would have by now, has tried to, evacuate their own students from, or not students now, their own nationals from Sudan. And now that man, Mohammed Saidu, has also, spoken to, given a word to the federal government to also do that to students or Nigerian nationals too in Sudan. And I think the federal government should take that and also try to evacuate Nigerians in Sudan, because it's not enough. I mean, we should have our president safe, but far more than that, he is responsible for the lives of Nigerians, both home and abroad. And he should look to that aspect as well.
All
it's
right.
very important.
You should look to that as well. So let's, Adama Poll, please warned against cover-up. Page 2 of the Punch newspaper, FAAC allocation drops as federal government state shares 715 billion naira. On page 19 of the Punch newspaper, and that's all there.
All right. On the Guardian newspaper this morning, 40 days to go, FEC approves over 100 billion naira contracts. That's on page 6. And I think that 40 days to go is counting this particular administration. 40 days to go, FEC approves over 100 billion naira contracts. And it's on page 6. I think it's some sort of alert to see that the federal government, as much as some other states that I'm sure are also approving some contracts now with very few days to leave office. It's important that you have funds on ground to fund whatever contracts that you're approving. You don't leave an incoming government to inherit whatever decisions or, problems or challenges you're causing. You should know that whatever things you do right now would impact the incoming administration. And it's important to avoid conflicts. And then it's also important to avoid what happened here in Osun State. There should be proper handing over, proper transitioning committee. It's important to have that, because you're not going to be the one to suffer it. The people that you've led for whatever number of years you've been there are the ones that would really go through the pains, the hardships, the challenges that the incoming government will face. And it's not a good thing.
Well, it's not a good thing. I hope that all of these are done sincerely, and not with some hidden agenda to make life difficult for the incoming administration.
All right, going to the Metro page. That's on page 8. 20 years on, family relieves memories of Adeife Akinola Akindeko. Well, to get more of that story, you check page 8. And still on page 8, athletes, officials panic as National Stadium Lagos floodlight collapses. Athletes, officials panic as National Stadium Lagos floodlight collapses. That's on page 8. Well, on page 6, crack widens in APC over alleged misuse of 30 billion naira zoning concerns.
But before we get to, I'd just like to go back to that.
That flood, yeah.
Yes, the National Stadium. I mean, imagine it was daytime. There were children running around. There were athletes running around trying to get in their fitness. Or there was a competition going on, and people were in the stadium, and the floodlight comes crashing down. We will not be sitting here talking about floodlights. We might be talking about bodies now.
We'll be talking about panic.
Panic, yes. We're talking about casualties.
Yes.
And again, the quality of the work we do in Nigeria is very much suspicious, very much suspect.
Yeah.
You know, but you see billions of naira earmarked for all of these projects every year, every now and then. And this is what we get in return. Substandard, I'll call them substandard buildings, actually.
Yes.
Because I have never heard of a stadium in the UK or in France or in Germany being torn apart by a flood. You know, heavy breeze, not an earthquake now or a tornado or a tsunami. It's heavy breeze, it's a rainstorm pulling down that kind of structure that's capable of causing really, really huge damage. I think we need to do better in this country.
Yes, we do. There was a match, I think it was Arsenal's match, you know, some days ago. And then after the first half, you could see the maintenance crew wetting the field immediately after the first half. And you would wonder if we have that kind of thing in place in Nigeria. Apart from that, even if not after the first half, do we have a maintenance crew who really put in the work? Do we have the money earmarked for maintenance every year? Do we have it going to where they're supposed to go as and when due? Those are the questions that we keep asking ourselves, because sometimes you just look at the stadiums and ask, were they never mentioned? You see the color. In fact, it's not even attractive. You look at a lot of things. You see dilapidated areas at stadiums where, you know, active activities are going on almost every day. And you ask a lot of questions. A lot of questions. And if the federal government or state governments are not getting it, how would you then approve buildings and expect that people will not also cut corners?
Yes.
So everyone needs to put their feet on the ground and do the right thing. It's very important. And you should know that you're the head. Governments are the head. And people always looking to you to take their cues from you. But then away from that story, we move to page 15. Excess crude accounts down to $474,754, says FAAC. And to the last story down there, to the bottom strip, page 6, Total, Shell to end gas flaring as stakeholders decry industry loopholes. Total, Shell to end gas flaring as stakeholders decry industry loopholes. That's on page 6.
Yeah, also looking at the story of Adefe and Akinola there. Those children were killed during the attack on the convoy of Senator Yabo Ojo, Yabo Obasanjo Bello. Many years ago, 2003, there was an attack on a convoy. Those 2 young, promising kids were killed. We hope that their spirit and their souls continue to rest in peace 20 years on. Well, let's check out the Nation newspaper this morning. Nation newspaper says, why Buhari didn't intervene in Adamawa poll crisis by government. My question is, what intervention would the president had given? How would he have intervened? What intervention?
Well, I don't think it's out of place to, expect some sort of intervention.
That's my question.
I was pointing it out the other day that why should they even go to him in the first place? And you spoke of the fact that the appointment process would have been run by him, and he also needs to know. So if they need to get to him, then we also need to hear something that he would say or some moves that he will make.
But the question is, what sort of intervention? He is not an electoral umpire.
My concern in the first place.
He cannot speak.
He's not a justice.
So there was no intervention. He could not have given any direction to the police. He's not the IGP. What intervention, you know? But you see, we like to complicate issues the same way Binani went on air to read the acceptance speech and said, President Muhammadu Buhari, congratulations, you elected the first female governor. And, you know, if we were to operate a very civilized and more modern legal system, you could interpret that to mean that president was in on the whole debacle shenanigan that happened in Adamawa. Because why are you thanking the president of your country for your electoral victory?
Yeah.
Except you're telling us something we don't know.
Probably.
They're telling us something we don't know, you know. So I don't know how President Buhari would have intervened or what he would have done in the Adamawa poll crisis. But it's good to see that he didn't intervene. I remember when he was talking to some governors and was telling them that they were lucky to have won their states. Some opposition governors now that they were lucky because he chose to, or the party chose not to, use military or police to intimidate anybody. For me, that the statement was glossed over, but it showed the extent to which the executive wields power in terms of elections. That's why many persons say it's difficult to defeat an incumbent sitting as the executive position holder, because they wield enormous power and they can always dictate the rules of the game. But President bar the Cash saga, he's mostly stayed out of certain controversies like this. You know, he's not waded into them and has not said anything. But let's see how it goes. Tinubu 6 probe of the Bako NSCDC commandant summoned. Yes, I like the fact that everybody is summoning. They are all members of their staff now. The police has done same. The NSCDC too now is doing same. Call those men and ask them why they forgot where their loyalty was supposed to lie. Their loyalty should have been to the Constitution, should have been to the law, and they should not have in any way encouraged any form of illegality, like what happened in Adamawa on Sunday. Below that story, Kaduna 1,266 killed, 4,973 abducted in 15 months. It's painful, says El Rufai. Now hold on that story. Before you make any comment, look at the right-hand side of the nation. 172 Nigerian troops set for Guinea-Bissau. Now merge the story together, and then you see the failure of our leadership. You see the insensitivity of our leadership. You see the misplaced priorities of our leadership. People are getting slaughtered in southern Kaduna, and you're sending 172 troops, ammunition, personnel to Guinea-Bissau for peacekeeping while your country is in shambles. I mean, what sort of leadership are we blessed with?
I think it's a common thing with African countries. I mean, working on this Sudan story, I could see also that, the African Union, some presidents, the president of South Sudan, Kenya, and one other country like that. My concern is really with the president of Kenya, because as of last month, his own country too was, having protests and all of that, riddled by lots of, controversies as well. And then he's the one also going to, Sudan to, we was just talking about having peace there and all of that, But what I really don't understand is how you feel you have some sort of right or legal or moral standing or justification to have your own house in disorder and think that you can speak to another house to have it, in order. I don't understand how we do things like that in Africa. but I don't know if it happens in other, continents. But I'm really particular about this continent, about Africa, and how we just leave our own things unattended to and attend to other people's businesses. It's really unfortunate that we have that kind of orientation. I don't think it is right. I don't think it's what we're supposed to be doing. I think you should, or even if you would wade into other matters, have yours too, have some sort of measures in place to try to also cushion the effect of all this, problems and challenges in your own country while you're also attending to another. It means that you have enough manpower to do both at the same time. But this is not the case, because we are having this statistic of 1,266 people killed just in 15 months and several other thousands abducted. It's really bad. It's really bad.
Really, really bad. But then I hope the government would come to the rescue of citizens.
I hope the government will come to the realization of the gravity of this statistics, that it doesn't really bode well for this. It does not bode well for the country
at all. It doesn't. So let's, at the bottom, FEC okays 1.5 trillion naira for roads, policemen to undergo hepatitis B test. Very important for these people who are, some of them who drink, some of them who take, hard substances, just to ensure that their health is optimal. You can't function optimally if your health is not optimal, know. And you wake up in the morning as early as 5 a.m., as early as 6 a.m. These men are already in the street with bottles in their hands, and you begin to wonder what's going on here. Why is that happening? Reeking of cigarette and alcohol that early in the morning. I wonder.
I do not think that all this more physical diseases should be the only concern. I think they also should be subjected to, psychological evaluation
every
as well.
now and then.
It's very important. It's in fact, it's even more important than the hepatitis and the COVID-19 or whatever other tests you want to put them through. Because there are lots of things like the way you, the psychoanalysis is very important. It really is. They need to be subjected to that as well.
Well,
they need to be taken through, and not just the police.
Yes, not just the police. That has to happen across the security architecture.
Yeah.
Above the nameplate, Iwanya, who is a president, help Ekweremadu, acting Labour Party chair, rejects suspension by party NEC. I remain in charge, he says. Buhari to appeal judgment voiding Ararome's remove. Man, just let it go. You have less than, this is 40 days now. 29 plus 20 plus 10, 39. You have just, why do we do that in this country? And the debt management office says Nigeria not defaulting in China debt repayment. Well, so we're not defaulting. That's what the debt management office is saying. Thankfully, it's good news. It's really bad news when you default on your payment. But we are not doing that, and we hope it continues that way. Well, those are the papers this morning. We'll take a break now. When we'll come back, we'll bring you our guests and have a discussion for this morning. Stay with us.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Eva is pounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewe,
And your sports Amazon, Nengi Ernest.
on this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Let's talk sports. Let's speak the most universal language of the world.
Turn it up! It's the Wild Wild West, and Western Spring Television is pulling out all the stops to make sure that you don't miss out on every of the fun and happenings around you. Yup, we've got you covered because your girls got all the juiciest tidbits and entertainment news from around the world. Cross over to the chocolatey side of entertainment. Join
All right, welcome back to the show. It's still Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. Now it's time to take our interview segment for you. And this morning, we'll be looking at a very sensitive topic, something that's been rocking the boat in Osun State. Now, here's the background to that story. In Osun State, there are 30 local government areas, and there is one area office in Modakeke. But at the House of Assembly, there are 26 state constituencies at the Osun State House of Assembly. And I'd like to take those constituencies for you very shortly. But the gist now is that in Osun State, some part of the state are asking to be included in the State House of Assembly. They are saying that they are not comfortable with being lumped up, with another local government and with another state constituency, and that state constituency or that constituency now is the Orolu people, who feel that they should not be lumped with the Irekwodun Orolu state constituency, saying that they want to be on their own, just like you have Ila, you have Oshogbo, you have Olorunda, Ayedire, Ayedade, Obokun, and so many others. If you're north, if you're south, if you're east, you have Elisha East, Elisha West, and you have Iwo. You have all of these constituencies, Egbedore, Ejigbo, Egbedore, and so you want a constituency to be created for you. Now we're speaking with a legal practitioner this morning, Prince Ademola Oyedokun, who joins us live via Zoom on the show this morning. Thank you so much for joining us, Prince Oyedokun.
Good morning, Western Spring Television. Good morning, Nigerians. It's a pleasure being here again.
Yes. So now let's before we even get to the issue of the State House of Assembly now, it's been a long battle. The local government saying that they are a local government, and they are not recording, they are not on the same, they should not be on the same table. Take us through the genesis of that conversation.
The issue at hand relating to inadequacy of seats in the State House of Assembly is not peculiar to Osun State alone. It cut across all the states of the Federation. And the problem started in 1999 during our transition from military government into the current republic that we are growing as a democracy. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 has clearly stated how the number of seats in every state House of Assembly should be constituted. To be precise, Section 91 and Section 112 of the Constitution says, reading the two sections together, provides that how to determine the number of seats that will be in the State House of Assembly should be determined by the number of the federal constituencies they have in that state. What is the federal constituency? Federal constituency is what is called the reps, the members of House of Representatives in the common man language. So take, for example, Osun has 9 federal constituencies. 9 federal constituencies. And Section 191 and Section 112 of the Constitution says Osun State House of Assembly should be times 3 or times 4 of that number. So if you look at it, simply put, Osun State will have a minimum of 27 seats in its House of Assembly. As it stands now, we have only 26.
Oh, looks like we've lost connection to Prince Oyedekunle there, who was trying to give us some insight into the genesis of the entire issue, talking about the fact that it's not just peculiar to Osun State, and that so other states have that issue, trying to lay background really to the problem that we have. Okay, he is back now. Prince Oyedekunle. Okay, he's also gone. We're trying to get across to him so he can give us more insight into that matter. But like I was saying earlier, it's been a long conversation, particularly with this year's result in the House of Assembly. All right, Prince Oyedekunle, you were making a statement earlier.
Yes, thank you very much. The connection was lost. Sorry about that. So as I was saying, the constituencies that were suppressed nationwide were already created. There is a letter written by the INEC itself, dated 2nd June 2004, to National Assembly, admitting that across all the states of the Federation, the states are not having adequate number of constituencies as provided by Section 91 and 112 of the Constitution. And INEC listed the number of state constituencies that were suppressed in each state of the Federation. Some state has 3 suppressed, some has 2, some have as much as 4, or some has just 1. And INEC listed the local governments that are involved. For Osun State, it happens to be the entire geographical area known as Orolu local government should be the 27th state constituency seat that was suppressed in Osun State. So when all the states of the Federation came across that letter, right, they began to push INEC to come and conduct elections into those suppressed states constituencies. And that is the origin of the problem. It's not peculiar to Osun State alone. Now, nobody knows the reason why INEC is reluctant to comply with constitutional requirement. INEC as an electoral body is expected, as a public institution, is expected to conduct itself in line with the provision of the Constitution. But INEC, having come to that realization since 2nd June 2004, that the way it has delineated constituencies across all the states of the Federation is not in accordance with the Constitution. They ought to have since then corrected that error. But INEC refused to correct that error, and Nigeria is living with it. So many local governments across the country, just like Orolu local government has done, have taken INEC to court. Many states, many local governments across the country and many constituencies have taken INEC to court, asking court to compel INEC to comply with the Constitution and begin to conduct elections into those state constituencies. What has come out of those court litigations? Most of these constituencies won their cases in the Federal High Court. Most of these cases won their cases in the Court of Appeal. But when they get to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court is of the opinion that the people that were aggrieved when these constituencies were suppressed since 1998 ought to have gone to court immediately after the suppression, within 3 months, under what we call Public Officers Protections Act. That law provides that if you are wronged by a public officer in the performance of his official duties, you are to take that public officer to court within 3 months of the occurrence of the wrongful act. So the Supreme Court is of the opinion that in as much as this constituency may be right to have claim to their constituencies, their case is incompetent because they refused to go to court within 3 months since 1998 when the wrong was committed. And as a result, Supreme Court is throwing out all these cases, let's say on technical ground now. But does that justify INEC refusal to comply with the Constitution? And that is an issue, with due respect, I have with the Supreme Court. This is a kind of case where substantial justice ought to have been done, especially when constitutional matter is superior to any other statutory question. I don't think an issue of the Constitution should be a matter that should be subjected to the Public Officer Protection Act, because the Constitution is superior to that act. The Constitution is superior to that act, and this is a matter of every person and authority being bound by the provision of the Constitution. Can we say because people had not gone to court within 3 months since 1998, INEC can now go ahead and dwell on perpetually in violation of our Constitution? We have that issue. So that is the genesis of the issue of the constituency across the country. And then look at Section 73 of the Constitution as well. Let us assume that in 1999 or 1998 through 1999, INEC omitted to conduct elections into these constituencies. That's a failure on their part. And let us also agree that the people that were aggrieved, they have no right to go to court again because they had not gone to court within 3 months. What happens to Section 73 of the Constitution? Section 73 of the Constitution says every 10 years, INEC shall, as a matter of constitutional duty, review the delineation of constituencies, federal constituency and senatorial constituency, ditto State House of Assembly constituencies. Since 1999, the number of constituencies we have in the House of Rep remain 306. You see 306 or 309, and then the over 300. Then we have 109 members of Senate. They are duty bound under the Constitution to review this number, or the creation of new constituency, or review or readjustment of the boundary of the constituency every 10 years. INEC has been failing in performing these duties. Why? To me, there is no justification for any constitutional breaches. There is no justification for it, for any constitutional breaches. All right. INEC has refused, and they are failing in performance of their duty. They only conduct election, and that's all they do. Other duties imposed on them by the Constitution, they fail.
Okay. So, Prince Oyedeokun, prior to the 2019 general elections, the Olufon Traditional Council of Chiefs wrote a letter to the Senate President, Bukola Saraki, at the time. It describes the development as a gross violation of Section 91 and 113, which stipulates a minimum of 27 state constituencies. Now, I quote a part from that letter. It says, Orolu local government has always been merged with Irekpodun local government as a single state constituency named renamed Irepodun Orolu State Constituency. The INEC created a separate Orolu State Constituency and suppressed same in 1996. Now, before we move on to other parts of the letter, did INEC actually create Orolu State Constituency in 1996? Or was it just a provision of the law?
It was created and it is existing, only suppressed. It is not yet cancelled. The semantic interpretation of the word suppressed presupposes something that is existing but is being repressed. It's being suppressed. Suppressed is what it is, not cancelled. So INEC created Orolu State Constituency in 1999. And when it was created, so were other state constituencies which were currently under INEC suppression. And by suppression, they simply refused to conduct election there, which is also a violation of the section 16 of the Constitution, which says when a constituency becomes vacant, when the seat of a seat becomes vacant, INEC shall conduct election to it within 60 days. Yes, that's what the Constitution says. It was definitely created. And as I said earlier before, INEC in its own letter of 2nd June 2004 wrote National Assembly saying, we suppressed Orolu State Constituency. We have not been conducting election there in Osun State. Just like the other constituencies, they mentioned other constituencies in other states too. They were seeking National Assembly's permission to go ahead and conduct elections into those seats. Their justification now is that National Assembly had not given them go ahead. Under the Constitution, INEC is an independent body. They are not subjected to any approval from National Assembly in performance of their duty, especially conduct of an election. So as a result, they didn't need such approval they were looking for from National Assembly. They have listed in that letter all the state constituencies across the federation which were suppressed, and Orolu is one of them. It is on the strength of that letter that the Orolu Traditional Council had to write the Senate President in the build-up to 2019. That letter you just mentioned. So it is in existence, no doubt.
Okay, so
it's supposed to be 27th seat in Osun State House of Assembly.
Now, still talking about that letter now. The Olufon Council now, Traditional Council of Chiefs, also claims that on Wednesday, 28th May 2014, presiding judge of the Federal High Court in Osogbo delivered judgment and pronounced that the composition of the present 26 state constituencies in the Osun State House of Assembly is improper without restoration of the suppressed constituency that was supposed to be the 27th in Osun State. Now, if there was a court judgment, what is stopping INEC? We'll also come to some other contending issues, particularly in the build-up to this year's election that happened last year. But why has INEC still refused to obey both the court orders now?
As a legal practitioner who has a personal duty to continuously update himself on every legal issue, that judgment was given in 2014, 28th May, if I'm right. And the judgment specifically pronounced that Osun State House of Assembly, as properly constituted, is improper. And that is just the truth. If the Constitution says
we seem to have lost connection to Prince Oyedeokun, who will join us shortly. But let's while we're doing that, let's take you through the state constituencies that we have at the Osun House of Assembly. 26 of them: Oriade State Constituency, Ilesha West Constituency, Ilesha East, Atakumosa East and West, Obokun Constituency, Ife East, Ife Central, Ife North, Ife South, Oshogbo Olorunda, and the one in contention, Irepodun Orolu, Ifelodun Constituency, Oduotin, Borikwe Boluwaduro Constituency, Ila, Ifedayo, Ayedire Olaoluwa Iwo, Ede North, Ede South, Gbedore Constituency, Ejibo, Irewole Ishokan, and Ayedade. These are the 26 state constituencies that currently make up the Osun State House of Assembly. That means there are 26 seats up for grabs in any election circle. But there have been conversations around the fact that there is a subsisting court judgment and there is a subsisting part of the Constitution that makes provision for a 27th seat that has now been lumped together with another State Constituency record Orolu. When we were able to reconnect to Prince Oyedeokun, we'll also be looking at an incident that occurred last year in the build-up to the general election. But I understand it's back now. Prince Oyedeokun, thank you for joining us again.
Sorry about the connection. I really don't know what's wrong with the connection.
All right, but please proceed.
Okay. As I was saying, the court actually made its order, consequential order, directing INEC in 2015 to put everything in place to conduct election to that seat, that 27th seat of Osun State House of Assembly. However, with the hope that INEC was going to comply with that directive of the court, INEC refused while the judgment was subsisting. INEC then appealed in 2016 against that judgment, and their excuse now in 2019 is the pendency of that appeal. The reason why INEC has appealed is that they are relying on the decision of the Supreme Court saying that Orolu local government or Orolu people ought to have gone to court since 1998 when the constituency was suppressed. As we speak now, that appeal is still pending before the Court of Appeal, Akure Division. So that is why INEC has not complied with that decision, because they believe they have a pending appeal, and until that appeal is decided, they don't want to comply.
So why is the appeal still pending since that time?
Thank you very much. Everybody knows that the judicial process in Nigeria is very, very slow. It moves at a snail's pace. At a snail pace. It is only a pre-election matters. A pre-election matter where the constitution has given made it to be time bound. It must be decided by the court, the court of first instance within 180 days, and by court of appeal within 60 days, and then Supreme Court within 60 days. The interesting twist. So the issue between INEC and Orolu local government and Orolu people or Orolu state constituency is the case filed by the Action Democratic Party, ADP, in 2022, when a new course of action arose. That is the latest twist to it,
yes,
regardless of the appeal.
Yes, I was going to come to that, Prince Oyedeokun, that issue. So let's just get there immediately now. In 2022, October thereabout, the Federal High Court in Osogbo declared Sadiq Ismail Kayode of the Action Democratic Party, ADP, as a properly nominated candidate for the election into the Orolu State constituency of the Osun State House of Assembly. You know, the courts made some pronouncement, he directed the INEC to remove the name of that man, Sadiq, from Borikwe Buluwaduro State constituency. In fact, that was the bone of contention at the time, that the man who the court had described as validly nominated for Orolu State constituency was now taken by INEC to be a contestant in Borikwe Buluwaduro State constituency. Why did that happen? Why did INEC seemingly switch the constituencies?
Thank you very much. The facts are before the court. The ADP as a political party who nominated Mr. Ismail Sadiq Kayode believe that the constituency exists. As we all know, it exists, but it's being suppressed. And the Supreme Court had said you cannot force INEC to restore any such suppressed constituency if you have not done that within 3 months when it happened in 1998. But that does not stop INEC if it chooses on its own volition to conduct election into any of these suppressed constituencies, because they have restored some of these constituencies in some states. INEC may decide tomorrow and say, okay, it is within their constitutional and statutory power. We want to restore this constituency. We want to conduct election there. And ADP in 2022, during the electoral process, gave it a trial. Let our party nominate a candidate into this constituency. Let us test it. If INEC we accept it and revive the constituency, that is where a new fight started between ADP and INEC. different from what Orolu local government had with INEC. And then ADP invited the INEC to come and supervise their primaries in Orolu State constituency. And INEC obliged them. INEC supervised the primaries, which was done by consensus, and Ismail Sodiq Kayode became the candidate of the party. So
if INEC supervised that primary, why did he still go ahead and not conduct election into that constituency?
I'm coming. So you supervise the primaries, then you are said they nominated you issued the nomination form, and the nomination form was filled with form EC9 and EC13 with particulars of the candidate showing where he's contesting for. It was uploaded to your portal and you accepted it. You never wrote a letter to reject it to the party by telling the party that this constituency remains suppressed. We are not accepting your candidate. You accepted the candidate. Then, in August, you published the particulars of the candidate within Orolu State constituency. And the people of the constituency became happy that INEC had accepted nomination into this constituency. Then the last step before the election is the publication of the list of candidates. When the list of candidates came out, the candidate's name now appeared in Boripe Boluwaduro State constituency, which to us is an error. And the ADP as a party complied with the provisions of the Electoral Act. They immediately wrote INEC, you have made a mistake. There are two candidates. There is a person contesting for Elisha West. He was posted to Elisha East. And Sodiq contesting for Orolu was then protested to Boripe Boluwaduro. The party, as required by law, wrote a letter to INEC, and then he posted an affidavit that is required, drawing the attention of INEC to the error. One would think INEC will reply that letter and correct the error. They replied the letter. In the reply, they never said there is no Orolu constituency. What they said was that the party misled them.
Well, we have lost connection to Prince Ademola Oyedokun there. He was just giving us some quick story, very interesting conversation between the INEC and the ADP as a result, as a fallout of the agitation of the Orolu people to have their own state constituency at the House of Assembly. But we'll take a quick break now, and when we come back, we'll bring you the continuation of the interview. To stay with us.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever is pounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewe,
And your sports Amazon, Nengi Ernest.
on this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Let's talk sports. Let's speak the most universal language of the world.
Turn it up! It's the Wild Wild West. And Western Spring Television is pulling out all the stops to make sure that you don't miss out on every of the fun and happenings around here. Yup, we've got you covered because your girls got all the juiciest tidbits and entertainment news from around the world. Cross over to the chocolatey side of entertainment. Join me, Chocolate Cassie, on Eccentric as we take you into every bit of the juiciest news, fashion, music, movie updates.
All right, welcome back to the show. It's still Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. Now we'll continue the conversation, but we're now joined in the studio by another legal practitioner, Mr. Moses Obaditon joins us this morning. And we've been conversing with Prince Ademola Oyedoku, also a legal practitioner who's been with us via Zoom. So, Prince Oyedoku, you were just talking about the 2022 issue between ADP and INEC. Can you bring us to an end of that? Prince Oyedoku. Okay, it seems we're still having issues. But now let's come to Mr. Moses Obaditon. This issue now has been a back and forth, between all the parties involved. But what I'm going to ask is, why do we have a problem? Why do bodies, institutions have a problem with following a ruling of the court when there's a ruling given? I mean, last year there was a statistics released talking about how Nigeria's government was indebted to the tune of about 600 billion naira in judgment debt. Now, why do we have that failure to comply with judicial rulings?
Well, when you look at the judiciary in isolation, you will not be able to understand the disease affecting the country. So it's not only in the judiciary you have delay in carrying out that, we have similar problem in the other arms. And the reason is just because people feel they are the state and the state is themselves. No, you are not the state. The state is a continuum. The government is an institution. The actors only come, like Shakespeare would say, we are both actors and actresses and have a part to play. So, but when people are in power, they assume they are more than the law that guide them into that situation. But in other developed countries, you are not superior to that institution. You have to comply with the rules and regulations. Let me give a very simple one. In developed country, when you are driving, this kilometer you are going to cover is already there. The police doesn't need to be in everywhere, but there is CCTV guiding you. The speedometer is showing to you. But when you violate that one, the next police post, you just see a policeman just give you a paper, and you have understood that because you have overspeed. In another example, once your driving license expire, you don't need to anybody to tell you. You just either stop driving or you go for a change. But in our own country, an average driver does not have driving license because he knows he can always wriggle his way through once he's questioned on the road. Even when your driving license has expired, people will not go there. Not fully aware they can always give this. So when you apply this one into the court knows that once he give an order, he's an authority. Even court itself cannot review itself unless a superior court. That's why the Supreme Court will say once we give a verdict, unless you find error or a mistake or a misapplication of that principle. And when you come without this, you will be sanctioned. So if court now give out order and an individual who have just come to the office maybe less than 10 years, 4 years, even 20 years, felt that he's not going to apply, the first question you ask, why? Is because others have done it and nothing happened. And that's why people refer to us as impunity. We just behave as that thing is not existent. For example, if you go to do exam and they said this examination will start by so and so minutes, you have done WAEC before. If you decide to write that exam before the time, what would they do? They send you out because you are violated. But here they are doing the same thing. The rules say this is what the judgment is, and you now refuse to comply. So by implication, you are simply saying, I don't believe in it. And you know the implication, there won't be sanction. But when there will be sanction, because you ignore it, police will prosecute you, you will lose your job, you will know how to comply. So that's the reason, because we know there won't be sanction.
Yeah, so Prince Oyedeokun, I'm sure you're back with us now on the show.
Yes, I listened to what my colleagues said.
Yes, we have Barrister Mr. Moses Obaditon. He was just telling us about the impunity with which some agencies and individuals do not carry out court orders, still within the realm of what we're discussing. But let's finish up the issue of the ADP versus INEC. Now, you were telling us about how...
The issue I was discussing, sir. Yes, ADP having nominated that candidate, INEC having accepted him, INEC having supervised the primary, issuing nomination form, accepting his nomination to Orolu constituency, and subsequently publishing his name and particulars as a candidate for that Orolu constituencies. So when the final list of candidates came out, the name of the candidate came out in a different constituency, which is Boripebolu State constituencies. And it was that publication of 6th of October 2022 that became the issue ADP as a political party had with INEC. If you had supervised our primaries, if you had accepted or given us nomination forms, if you had published the accepted nomination, if you had published the particulars of this candidate, what you have told us is that you are now ready to conduct election into the 27th seat of Osun State House of Assembly. Whether you now have power under the law to transfer that candidate from the constituency he is contesting in to another constituency where he has no interest, relation, or nativity. That is what took ADP to court against INEC. And that is the case filed in October, on October 17, 2022. And the Federal High Court looked at it and said, I agree in total with ADP. Yes, this constituency might not have been suppressed before, but you have decided to conduct election there this year. Having done all this, you don't have power to transfer the candidate to Boripe. Return him to where you accepted him. That is the decision of the Federal High Court on 26th of February 2023, which INEC then appealed. And the ground of appeal of INEC to Court of Appeal is that since the constituency was suppressed since 1999, the court cannot revive it. And we argued laboriously before the Federal High Court that the case we have brought to court is not the case of you restoring the constituency. Orolu local government had done that in the past. What we are asking here now is whether you have power to, having accepted to do election there, whether you can transfer candidates. And the transfer was done on October 6. Under Section 185 of the Constitution, we are supposed to go to court within 14 days, which we complied with. So the issue of having had to go to court since 1998 does not apply to ADP. It does not apply to the ADP in the circumstance of this case. Unfortunately, Court of Appeal misconstrued the case and found in favor of INEC. But I have the greatest pleasure to inform you that Action Democratic Party and its candidate, Sodiq Ismail Kayode, have actually filed their notice of appeal to the Supreme Court. So there is an appeal now pending with regard to that before the Supreme Court. My humble self happy to be their lawyer.
Oh, okay. So before we come back to you to look at the implications of creating another state constituency, let me ask you, Mr. Baditon, the court is so much involved in electoral matters, and in the past we've seen conflicting judgments, so much that the Chief Justice of Nigeria had to come out to ask them to stop, and even sanctioned, some judges. By dabbling into electoral issues, do you think that the judiciary sometimes, like he said, misconstrues issues and probably give the wrong judgment sometimes?
I will not agree with using the word dabbling. The judiciary is sitting on his own. The door of the court is open, and whoever feels grief can come there. But it is not the judiciary that is the problem. It is the politician. Will it not surprise you that in Britain, the last election petition, or what we call judicial intervention, happened about over 100 years ago. From maybe around 1800s, it happens just about. It lasted about one before anybody go to court and say, I disagree with that election. Why? Because over there, the politicians follow procedures. They know once this thing is done, they agree among themselves. The party agree this is the procedure. But here, even at the primary level, at the ward level, when they are doing primary election, which we call internal democracy, it's not there. Instead of allowing all the party members to come together, either direct or indirect, you will see one Baba will say, my son has just returned from abroad, and if you want to honor me, please let Lekon be the candidate. And then people will spit and say, how? I've spent a lot of all resources, I've done this, I've done that. Let me give a practical example. In 1988, I wanted to be a councillor in Alimosho in Lagos. And I went through the line, that's SDP. And they gave me a letter to go to African Church in Agege and see the reverend there. And when I submit my letter that I'm a candidate for councillorship in Akowojo, and arriving at that place, I met two elderly men. I said, I'm from Dr. X and Y. This is man. Oh, you are going to be candidate. And the other man said, no, Engineer Amure is already on the ground. And the other man said, no, they say we should screen them together. But lo and behold, they disagree among themselves. When I went home, I was single that time. And I told my fiancé, I said, I don't want trouble. Leave them with their problem. That was the last time I tried to go for an elective position. So what am I trying to tell you was that if that day I feel I can go to court and see that they say we should be allowed, and they have already picked somebody. They say, Engineer Amuri have already spent money. If they spend money, is that my business? It's an internal one. So if you cannot agree among yourself as party, and then you now lift this thing to court, with court say close the door against you. So the problem is not the court. The problem is those who bring themselves before the court and say, look at what he has said now. This thing happened in 1998. But they are now saying, INEC have taken it this time around. They've screened their candidate. They've announced his name. Everything has been done. And when the election was about coming, they now transfer me to another place. Is that the process? Is that the procedure? If you are going to be, why don't you write the man or invite him? So this is due to administrative license. This is what we intend to do. Because you have to give him regard that you are dealing with human being. Section 43. You must have that respect for that man. You shouldn't treat him like an animal. And the man feels grief. I've paid my money now. I've done the screening. You have published this thing. Why taking me to a place where people do not know me as somebody from that nativity, from that land? So the man says, okay, if that's it, let me go to court. So it's not the court that is dabbling. It is the politicians who have not been able to follow procedure. They are the one who will not follow the rules. They are the one who want to be king at all time. Look at what happened in Adamawa. The woman is the senator. She knows the rules that if people are contesting until they finish the counting, because the election was postponed and the thing was still going on, and somebody dabble into it. No, it's not judiciary this time around. The rec who's supposed to know that he's in the administrative overseer
who is hosting some other electoral commissioner from the other state, and he knows that the returning officer is the one to announce, and the man, for the reason best known to him, now bring the commissioner of police, bring the DSS director, bring the election. This is what this man scored. The other person, they didn't mention the score. So is it the court? The man is supposed to be an unbiased umpire, a neutral person. But the way you can see the bias, it goes for a party, and you know the ruling party is that woman, and the woman did not keep quiet now. Okay, that's madam, this thing is controversial. She ran to the court. He didn't go to court in Adamawa. He came to Abuja. Please restrain INEC, and they say you do not have jurisdiction. This thing didn't happen in Abuja. Go back to that place. Is it the court that is intervening now? Suppose that court contravened. They say, hey, judicial destroyed. Who ran to court? Nenani. Who did the thing? Human being. Who's supposed to know the rules, but they will not follow the rules. So because we do not follow the rules, that's why where we are. Until we follow simple rules. Do you know even your body have a rule? If you don't rest, you have a headache. If you overstretch yourself, you will collapse. And eventually you find yourself in the hospital. That rest didn't want to rest, you will rest in the hospital. The same thing in political process. If you don't do the needful, eventually you will convict yourself or do the wrong thing. And then police will come after you, or somebody will feel grieved that you have tampered on his right. We take you to court. So until we begin to allow what is naturally permissible and apply it in the human activity, which we call social interaction. In the social interaction, both of us can walk this place, but I must allow you to go. But if you in the process of struggling, I may hurt you. And in the process of hurting you, you have a right to react. Once you can decide to report me to the CEO of this place, I said, look at how Mr. Biden injured me. The other time, you have a right to hit me back. And you know the implication? We hit over, and those we sack us from this place. So this is what the politicians are doing, because they know the process. But because of ego, because of self-centeredness, because of the individual interest, not their own interest. So if it's in the interest, they won't be struggling like this. You know what it means. Easy way to make money. If your father is connected where you are coming from, you don't need to be here. They just package you. The next thing, hey, House of Rep. You know, some people, grandchildren are now House of Rep member. They have never contested in their life. They do not know some characteristics of democracy, but they are going to be in the National Assembly. And as soon as on the arrival, you change your suit, you change your car. Those are the things that's motivating it. But in developed countries, it's not like that. It's a service. You are given allowance, no salary, not extra something. They give you accommodation, they give you car, constituency. These are the things that's called, until we reduce that thing into service, not into business. Politics in Nigeria is business. Until it becomes service, this story will continue.
All right. In the first place, some of these local governments, should they have emerged in the first place, you know, as integral parts of a federal constituency? Should they have emerged in the first place, you know, now having to lead to problems like this?
If you look at the divisions of what we call constituency, it has been there either in the Electoral Act as well as in the Constitution. There could be about 5-6 local government coming under a same region, or what we call political constituency. For example, let's look at what do you call it now? Osun West. In Osun West, you are going to find Iwo. You are going to find some other local government. All that one. They have been there. They know the history. But in the future, maybe by the time they finish this population now, they will now say they want to recreate the political other constituency or that kind of. So it does happen. So, but no individual can just voluntarily or out of his own will and said, I want my local government to become a political other constituency or that kind of. So it is for administrative convenience. And sometimes even INEC dabble into it. They will say for every polling unit, there should be more than 500 people for administrative process. So that when you come on the day of election, once you are above that one, they will give you another box. So in the process, they also want to see how they could make it easy so that you don't travel far on the day. There won't be mobility. So they are the one normally do it. So if they do it and it is backed up by law, and that is why they said it was sanctioned or it was approved.
So once it is written and is documented, it's becoming the normal procedure that people has to do. So, but not on the day of election, you now change your mind, say, even though it's documented, even though the National Assembly has ratified that this is now a political region or constituency for so and so, no individual can do it. And that's if you do, since you have the law, you have the act, you go to court and challenge that kind of thing. But no individual, not even INEC can do it, because once they do it, they have to send it to the National Assembly for ratification.
All right, so Prince Oyedeokun, you're still with us on the show. Let me ask you now, if INEC agrees, if INEC now eventually decides to recognize and stop suppressing, let me use your term now, stop suppressing Orolu State constituency, what are the implications for the state? There are 26 seats on the floor of the House, 26, recognized by the state in terms of remuneration, in terms of administration. What would be the implications, yes, of an additional state constituency now?
Yes.
The point is this: every Nigerian, irrespective of who you are bound by the provision of the Constitution, and we have to respect it, because that's our ground norm. The Constitution has provided in Section 91 and Section 112 that the number of seats in the State House of Assembly shall be times 3 or times 4 of the number of federal constituencies. Meaning, the number of federal constituencies in Osun State being 9, our House of Assembly should consist of at least minimum 27. It's a constitutional provision. It cannot be changed by anybody, not even INEC. Doing so means engaging in an unconstitutional act. And having said that, I've also reiterated before that this is not Orolu people forcing INEC to create one for them. It has been created, and INEC wrote a letter admitting that we created this since 1999, but we suppressed it by failing to conduct election there. So it is existing, it is suppressed, and it's remaining suppressed. And it has been recognized by a subsisting judgment of the court, the judge's judgment of Justice Kwewumi in the suit of the local government against the INEC. So the implication for the state is that the court having declared the State House of Assembly as improperly constituted. It's improperly constituted because it is not in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. The Constitution says it must be minimum of 27 and it is 26. So if it is restored now, if the suppression is taken off from it, it means the Osun State House of Assembly will now be properly constituted. That is one. Two, the Osun State House of Assembly Commission, we have to recognize the 27th seat and begin to pay remuneration for the person occupying that seat at every time. So that is the implication for the state. And then it will mean that, as it were, everything that is being done by that House of Assembly now, if it is not properly constituted, the House of Assembly itself, their conduct is not being properly done. So Osun State will be properly governed. Don't forget the right of the people that are suppressed. It's not one person, it's entire community, entire local government, containing more than one town. It's as the headquarters and some other communities and villages. So the right of citizens that are erstwhile suppressed will be restored, and the citizens will be happy. And then it will make our democracy be more robust.
All right.
So those are the implications for the states.
Oh, okay. Now, I was going to ask earlier, there are other local governments that have been lumped into one state constituency. Boluwaduro, Borikpe together from one state constituency. Ayedade, Irewole, Shokan, 2 local governments also forming one state constituency now. The same thing, Irepo-Odun, Orolu. Now, on what basis is Orolu's case different that they can now split into 2? So can the same logic of times 3 or times 4 be applied to Borikpe, Boluwaduro, Irewole, Shokan, or is this just an exclusive preserve of Irepo-Odun, Orolu?
This is not exclusive preserve of Irepo-Odun, Orolu. As I stated earlier on, the number of the seats in the state is determined by the number of reps, and we have 9 reps. So times 3 gives us 27. That is the minimum we are entitled to as our Osun.
That's the minimum and not the most.
Not the most.
Okay.
Reading Section 81 and Section 112. So as to, there are about 6 local governments that are locked into 2 each. As we have mentioned them, Borikpe, Boluwaduro, Irewole, Shokan, Irepo-Odun, Orolu. INEC in its own wisdom, using the administrative yardsticks, which is most of the time dependent on the population, decided that to make the 27th one, out of these 3 pairs, which consists of 6 local governments, the Irepo-Odun, Orolu should be the one to be first split into two. I believe the consideration INEC had when they did that in 1999 is based on population. Remember, the last time we did a population census was 1991, and it was based on 1991 census report that this delineation of constituencies and creation of state and local governments were done in 1996. So those are the considerations, and I bet you putting Rolu and Irepodo together, their population definitely more than Ebolo, Waduro, Rewole, Sokan. So the INEC has, we are not clamoring for it. It has already been created. It is documented. It is only suppressed. And the basis, I believe, is on the strength of population and land mass.
All right. So, Mr. Abaditon, why do we have the Constitution is the Constitution is set, cast in stone? But why do we have different interpretations? Why do bodies, INEC, politicians, even corporate organizations approach it from different angles? Should the Constitution be open to multiple interpretations?
The Constitution cannot be open to multiple interpretation. It depends on the issue at stake. Sometimes when there's a dispute, there are people who call constitutional lawyer. When they take it up, they look beyond just letter you see. They also, because there are some other words behind the Constitution that explain some of the vocabulary which may not be known to an ordinary man, what you call the layman. And so whenever, like this issue that we are discussing now, if section 81 and the other section he mentioned said that for every number in the House of Assembly of State, it should be the number of rep times 3. And mathematically, that's 27. You don't need any grammar. So, and this thing has been agreed upon. They have been documented. And the people have even challenged it. So the issue is not because somebody interprets. The issue is simply because we have institution that does not obey its own law. Look at the Adamawa scenario. As the Residential Electoral Commissioner, you are not a returning officer. It is in your guideline. It is in the Electoral Act. The presiding officer shall announce, coordinate, reject, vote, and everything. And even if there is anybody that can do it is the National INEC that can review based on some factor and the report of the returning officer. So is it a grammar? It's not a grammar. But because of the tendency, remember I said in Nigeria, people feel they are superior to the institution. No, the institution is superior to you because government come, but institution remains. So if INEC has obeyed its own law and the Constitution, we won't have arrived at this one. It's very simple. Most of the INEC officials that are saying are not from Nigeria, are not from Osun. They are just here for administrative purpose. So all they simply need to do is just to comply. So it's not because of interpretation. It's simply because we have that kind of attitude. And that maybe somebody somewhere may feel if you give them that extra something, it may be to disadvantage. That's another view. And then the new man will say, no, we are sorry, that cannot be done. That will be another time. So it's not interpretation. It is administrative error or flops or just for human, whatever lapses. So it's not a matter, but then, and assuming that in the interpretation, the final interpretation is going to be the Supreme Court. That's why we have 3 layers. You first go to the High Court, you go to the Court of Appeal, from the Court of Appeal, you now go to Supreme Court. Remember, he said they have gone to Supreme Court. So whatever is going to be the final arbiter is what the law says. And you know that the Supreme Court has the power to create law. Because there's what we call lacuna, it lapses. So if in their own wisdom they now see it, it now becomes the final arbiter. People now make it as a point of reference until they issue another statement contrary to that one. That becomes the final one, whatever will have been written in that law. So it's not a matter of wrong interpretation. It is a matter of people, idiosyncrasies, biases, ego, and political maneuvering. In our own polity, you say, arise, we don't follow process. And when you don't follow process, it's like mathematics. If they say 2 plus 2 is 4, and 2 times 2, it also give you what? 4. But somebody say his own 2 plus 2 is 5. So is that process? It's an error. So that's the problem we have because people want to give their own meaning to situations that favor them.
All right. Well, so that's where we'll end this show this morning. Thank you so much, Mr. Moses Abaditon, who is a legal practitioner and a rights activist. Thank you for joining us on the show this morning. And also Prince Ademola Udokun, who joined us live via Zoom. Thank you so much for your time. We do hope that all of this is resolved in due course. Okay, so, well, that's how we end the interview segment of the show. I'll be back to tell you what's trending. Today, women are in the news. We're taking a break from all of the political kerfuffle, all of the political back and forth, to give you something different, fresh angle on spring trends. I'll be back after the break.
Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm Temitope Ajijola Oluwala. Good morning.